All right. Hello, everyone. It's our first recording in the new year. I know we've had a couple episodes drop in the last couple of weeks, but this, Billy, is our first time back. You know, it's always that interesting thing. You come back, there's that lingering couple weeks where you're kind of renewed, but things are slowly working in. And now this week, I feel like, man, it's like now we're ready to go. Enough of the warming. Let's go. And I'm sure a lot of people can relate to that. I had the chance to go last week to CES out in Vegas. This was my second time.
How was it? Tell us
At
about it.
CES. And yeah, for some of you that don't know, CES is the Consumer Electronics Show, and it is like the mecca of consumer electronics across almost all industries, from healthcare to the consumer electronics that you see if you go to a Best Buy. And a massive show attended by folks across the entire globe. One of the most diverse audiences of a conference that I've ever been to, from people's background to people's skill set and specialty. And our CEO Tobias has spoken at the last two voice summits at CES at the voice event there. And what was unique this year about voice, TD was really, Tobias, he was really talking about some of the failures that's happened in voice. And anytime you tell kind of somebody in the industry, you start talking about voice as the future, they immediately go to the Alexa, the assistant kind of experience, which is kind of just an okay experience. And it's really sure, when you're talking to that device, it's fine, but it's not really expanded to other businesses. Our team at WillowTree's, so we have a voice team, and I think they've recently put together some materials on our website that you can check out that really dials in kind of on the business application of voice and what we're doing for some of our clients. And in TD's presentation, he highlighted some of the failures, but what we need to do in order to change the game and really leverage this great technology that opens up so much opportunity. And in addition to Tobias's presentation that I'd encourage you to check out, the most fun part, it would be hard not to acknowledge or admit, is like walking the main floor of CES and just the madness. And when I say the madness, this event is in the Las Vegas Convention Center, but also 4 other casinos. There are other trade show floors, so you could never see it all. And it's everything from the newest tech in auto all the way to people from China, Vietnam, kind of bringing on, like, you can kind of see the scale of how things are going to be a lot less expensive. So, buying webcams for like $1, and people they're promoting that. So it's a wide variety of stuff. Some of the wildest stuff I saw. So first of all, like an observation, VR and AR was everywhere. And so there was the amount of booths and technology focused on everything from glasses that you can wear, goggles for video game experiences, but some of like the cool applications of like really inexpensive video camera and video technologies that will enable, when the virtual space becomes reality, we're going to need to be able to shoot and record and create all of these experiences. And so brands like Sony are figuring out, hey, typically this required 30 different cameras. We've developed a technology where you just need 2 to record and create a virtual experience. So there's tons of new technology around that, and the applications across training, employee communication, and then of course games was kind of mind blowing, and a space that I felt just like out of my depth in the whole time, because here you are surrounded by the coolest tech that is going to be hitting in the next few years.
So a constant complaint or like a naysay about VR, AR is that it's uncomfortable to wear. It's not super practical. The experience of being in that world isn't as good as like being in the real world. There's no reason you'd want to spend hours and hours there. Did you demo anything or see anything that gave you the sense that that's changing in a tangible way?
I saw a lot of people doing those things, from like people like riding a roller coaster and all that stuff. But what was really cool is just more like watching, somebody standing, a human being standing in the middle of 4 cameras surrounding him, and then it creating in real time the virtual version of him. And so it's like, okay, you can tell they're really working on how can we make creating virtual experiences really quick and easy. A couple other things. There was a company called Ultra Leap that had this gesture based kiosk. And so there was so the virtual reality stuff, like really cool, really wild. And then there were like just really applicable kind of like practical things that like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And, kiosks are everywhere. A lot of people don't want to touch these things anymore, kind of coming out of COVID. And so Ultra Leap had this really amazing monitor that was a kiosk experience that you didn't have to touch, but it still operated the same way via just gestures. And that was like one of those simple things that kind of blew my mind. I was like, well, I don't understand how this is actually working. A couple other things. The WillowTree team, we were blown away by a tech that has been out for like a few years. Samsung has this Frame TV. Have you ever seen the Frame? Do you know what I'm talking about? The Frame TV?
Oh yeah, I do.
So
Yes.
it's got like a decorative thing around it, and you can like put artwork. But like this is like a 5-year-old technology, and we were standing there on the newest Samsung Frame TV, just like touching it. Like, no, it's not a TV. That's like art, because it's like very matte looking. I don't know if they've improved the thing, but we were all like ready to write a check or give them our credit card of like, how do we get our hands on this TV? Because it was mind blowing. Looked like a true piece of art hanging on the wall. And then finally, there's just like a lot of like stuff that makes you pause and say, are we really there yet? And I know, we are in certain areas with like self-driving and Tesla, but I went to the Ram truck announcement, and they're targeting folks that are working out on construction sites, and they're literally showing, I think it had something called shadow mode, where this guy is walking and the truck is following him. There's nobody in the truck, but it's just following right behind him. And it's just like, is the car going to run over this guy? Like, what's going to happen?
That's cool.
And it was really just kind of crazy to think like, wow, I guess this stuff is actually starting to hit mass market. So anyways, I could talk forever, but hard not to share some of the cool things that I saw at CES. And we were going to do, I think you wanted to talk before we get into predictions. You wanted to talk a little bit about some of the emails you've been seeing. Is that right?
Yeah, definitely. So today we will mostly cover 2023 predictions. We're on the bandwagon. Everyone else is giving their predictions. We will try to have our own hot takes on what we think is going to be big or what's going to die out or what we're going to see a lot more of in 2023. But before that, I have had two email experiences that I wanted to call out, because one that I thought was just like exceptional. It was a use case that I loved for email from a brand who I never give any love to, so it's their time to shine. And then one email use case that I've seen across 3 different brands in the same week that I want to use this platform to put a call out to all brands. Please stop doing this. I hate it. It's a terrible tactic. Let's start with what I loved. Y'all know I talk about Sephora just about every week. I love Sephora. I'm loyal to them. I'll go out of my way to shop at Sephora. But this week I had to go to Ulta, and I've actually had to go twice. So I was buying Christmas gifts for my nieces in Montana, and Sephora in Missoula, Montana is not nearly as large or accessible as Ulta. So I bought them gift cards online and had them emailed to them for Christmas. And then a few days ago, I got a notification letting me know that one of the gift cards hadn't been opened yet, like the email for it hadn't been opened, and just warning me that had happened. So I texted my niece. I didn't realize she's like very polite. So I should have noticed that she hadn't like thanked me for giving her that gift. But I said, hey, just so you know, you have an email from Ulta waiting for you. And she went and found it, and she went, oh, like it went to my spam somehow. Thank you so much. And like, what a great use case for email.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about the personalization that has to go into that and how they would have triggered it. But it's like they knew that I purchased an email gift card for somebody else, that person didn't open that email. And then they were able to trigger an email back to me. Like, that's pretty sophisticated. It seems very straightforward. But the actual logic for how you build that took them some time and effort. And really, the point of it is just convenience. Like, I'm sure Ulta doesn't, maybe they care if people spend their gift cards, because I'm sure they often spend more than the amount on the gift card itself.
Right.
But I was just thinking about the time they must have invested and the convenience for me.
Yeah.
Great email.
That's awesome. Now, what was the? You have had me on the edge of my seat of this brands. Please stop doing this teaser. So tell me more about that.
Okay, so in the same week, 3 times from 3 different consumer retail brands for primarily clothing. I won't call them out, but we'll just let it sit. I've gotten emails where the subject line basically implies that I purchased something from them recently, and they're like, "You purchased this, thanks," or like, "Thanks for shopping.
Mhm.
How was your purchase?" And I had to stop and look at the subject line and be like, wait, I didn't buy anything from this brand at all recently. Did somebody like hack my account? Did somebody spend money at this store with my credit card and they're thanking me for it? And I think that it's intentional because then I'd open the email and I'd realize pretty quickly this isn't a receipt. It's not a follow up of any sort. It's not letting me know that I actually purchased it. It's just a click through trap to
Yeah,
get me to
it's a
like open it.
slimy
It's just a
tactic.
subject line trick. A slimy tactic from big, well known retail brands. You got me. You got me to open your email. It did not make me want to shop. It did not make me click through that email. I just simply clicked on it because I was looking for a certain type of content to confirm that like my credit card hadn't been used in Rogue. And then that's even more frustrating. It's like, now I don't want to look at your jackets and your athleisure wear.
Yeah.
I'm annoyed with you.
Yeah, that's annoying. That kind of falls in the category like if it feels kind of slimy, it probably is. And so it's amazing. So you said that's not just from one retailer that happened. That must be like a one person does it and they're like, oh, that's a good way to improve open rates. Let's
Yes.
try that. Yeah, that's what a
Yes.
bummer.
Because it was 3 retail brands. I assume it was, yeah, like a spotted and mimicked tactic. But
Terrible.
I think in general, Rebecca gave some good wisdom on this last week on the pod, and I'm going to basically just mimic her. But like, your aim as a marketer should be to delight people with
Yeah.
happiness or convenience with your email. It shouldn't be to cause them to click on it because they're nervous or afraid.
Yeah, not that's like a reporting tactic that is just it causes more damage, and I think really starts to impact brand loyalty. That you can only get away with one or two of those types of kind of slimy tactics before people start to say, "All right, I'm out." So yeah, that's a bummer. All right, so 2023 in full swing. Everybody, I've been listening to a couple of podcasts. 2023 predictions. What's going to happen, and we've got to get in the mix as you said. And we were talking a little bit about how to structure some of our predictions, and instead of like super tight, almost like an Oscars show, what's the breakthrough brand going to be, which we explored a little bit. We're just gonna do some rapid fire predictions that we have, and maybe we can insert a couple spicy takes or wild predictions here. But I think let's start with I'll start with one of the like most obvious ones that I'm kind of obsessed with at the moment. It's really the reason I'm obsessed with it is I'm trying to change kind of my frame of thinking from the past couple of years. So the last 2 or 3 years, we, in my role, and I would imagine business leaders and managers and marketing directors at brands, we have been really driven by customer expectation and customer experience. That has been the North Star at every turn because certainly COVID started to change the game in terms of what brand customers were expecting from brands. We were a little bit of a digital arms race where brands were like building experiences, launching cool experiences as fast as they could, which then resulted in everybody else saying, "Oh gosh, we've got to catch up." And decisions on investments were being made very quickly because it
Mm-hmm.
just you had to do it. And also, I think a decent amount of brands had a little bit of extra dry powder because business was thriving. And boy, am I noticing that gone are I think those days are behind us where we're able to make gut decisions based on customer expectations and the experience. Sure, that is still really important, but ROI, the use of reporting language, whether you are a digital marketing coordinator or the vice president of digital heading to your CFO to try to get budget approval, every CFO across every organization is really looking at what is this, how is this going to move the needle? And I've gotten so accustomed to talking in this experience lens that I'm having to kind of like put on some different kind of hats this year already of, okay, am I positive and how can I model out that this is actually going to move the needle? So that's kind of my first projection. I keep mixing up the word prediction and projection, but you understand. I think this is going to continue throughout the rest of the year, and we're going to have to do a lot of hard work here.
Yeah, I think you're totally right, Billy. For most of the COVID era, it was easy to say you need this technology upgrade, this technology upgrade, this technology upgrade, because you have basic table stakes experiences you don't have, and the cost of these platforms will pay off. And that was sort of enough. It was like table stakes UX was the justification to spend money on technological upgrades and modernization. And I completely agree. I think this year, one of the things we're seeing is already a lot more scrutiny going into the spend of these platforms and what's the time to return on investment and where will that return come from? And is it going to come from performance gains or efficiency gains? How will we get there? So I suspect that more business leaders will continue to ask hard questions about whether or not they should be investing in new software and new capabilities. And already my teams are pivoting and they're thinking not necessarily like net new and putting a lot of their efforts towards system upgrades or software upgrades or, you know, sort of like rebuilding basic table stakes messaging in a new platform so that it can leverage different technology capabilities. They're really focused on creativity and how are they going to optimize what they have available or use more minor add-ons to add maturity layers. So for instance, I see a lot of Braze clients right now thinking about campaigns that utilize something like an AccuWeather or geolocation targeting and like the geo tagging that you have within the Braze ecosystem. For instance, we hear a lot of Adobe clients right now asking about like SMS and push in channels that are not as traditional in the B2B space. So I hope that what we get, if we're lucky, is some really cool creative campaigns.
Yeah, hopefully.
But if not, I'll take delightful table stakes.
Yeah. What about you? What are you thinking about in terms of the next year?
Yeah, this is an easy one, but I'm going to sort of softball it. I think because, especially in email and in other sorts of channel messaging, this is a really practical use case. I think that the advent of GPT chat and how we use chatbots to generate content for us, as well as AI driven imagery, I think we're going to see a lot of that come out in like email newsletters and in email imagery in part, well, I think for a couple of reasons. One, because that text is relatively simple. It tends to be short and to the point and crisp. The style for smart brevity and for email writing is very well known, so it's pretty easy to mimic. And there's not as much ethical debate around whether or not it's okay to send text to a consumer through a large brand email that was generated by a robot as there might be from like a person or a journalist or an author, where I think that's kind of a shadier area. So I think particularly in that channels, we're going to see these really nice tools become something that email marketers leverage. And oftentimes it's expensive to have a creative services team. Creative services teams are typically more focused on other initiatives for web or for app or wherever it is. They tend to see email as something that's like pretty tedious. It's hard to write great email copy, but it's really great when it's great. So I suspect that out of utility, we will see these technologies like really making an impact.
Yeah, and I would think in that entire space, AI and Chat GPT, you've got this new technology. You've got layoffs happening across a lot of the top platforms. So you would think there's going to be some incredible talent out there. So I have this sense that there are going to be hundreds of startups that are formed around this technology, and I'm guessing we're going to start to see some pretty cool stuff start to move quickly with it. So it feels like it's just the beginning.
Yeah, I totally agree. At the intersection of layoffs and cool technological advancement that's very easy to use, I will leave all of the debates that schools are having right now about how they regulate students' usage and instead lean into entrepreneurialism and how people will entrepreneurial venture around what they can possibly do in these spaces. That's a fun one.
Yeah. So another one that I was thinking about, we talk a lot about loyalty on the podcast and in our day to day and loyalty programs. And I think over the past year, I have seen this trend of many brands looking at their loyalty program and trying to revitalize it, restructure it, think about how to make it more engaging. And I think the brands, it's been no secret that Delta is like a top brand for me personally, but brands that are finding ways to do really cool co-branded partnership experiences are starting to stand out. And I think that's going to start to, Amex and Delta, Starbucks leading the way. So naturally, what's going to happen, I think, is we're going to start to see this across all sorts of brands that we interact with every day. Starbucks and Delta actually had an experience at CES where on the spot, if you linked your account, you got entered in to win an international two international plane tickets. But it was like one of those things like everybody wins, and so some people got a Starbucks gift card, but it was a co-branded booth all around integrating and linking your accounts. And I've got to think that they um, linked the accounts of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of business travelers at the show. And I think that's going to start to fizzle down to grocery brands and entertainment brands and how we interact with these brands every day. So I think if you're a loyalty marketer, it's so easy to get stuck in just kind of like you're driving loyalty experiences for your specific brand. But I think reaching across the aisle and starting to think about, who shares our values, who shares our type of experience focus that's not a direct competitor that we could maybe do some creative programming with, I think is going to be something we're going to see more of in 2023.
Yeah, so basically the technology that you need to be able to do that is you need to be able to collaborate in terms of identity resolution and
Yeah.
how you integrate experiences between two totally separate platforms. It's a fairly mature way of
Yeah.
working and treating consumers, but really interesting to see how brands are doing this. If big brands can do it, small brands can do it. So it will be fun to see what sort of more like localized
Yeah.
interactions might appear in this space of partnership.
And the brands that are going to be able to do it are the ones that have kind of eaten their vegetables over the past few years and created, a mature kind of open technical environment and that's not beholden to platforms or white labeled experiences. So the brands that have kind of done the hard work over the last couple of years are going to be set up to like, okay, it's going to take some customization work, but yeah, we're able to do that. So look forward to seeing what kind of cool
Totally.
stuff we
Yeah.
see.
Yeah. We work with so many big B2B clients and brands who would really struggle with this. They have a
Yeah,
lot of partnership in their model, but that lack of an integrated ecosystem or maybe the lack of a move to cloud will put them behind in this space.
yeah,
Consumers will begin to expect that if these two brands are partners or I interact with both of them, I should be able to have a similar and seamless experience across each. And I think as that expectation rises or consumers start to choose brands because they get both like Marriott points when they take an Uber ride and they kind of see the double deal there, we're going to see loyalty shift a
yeah,
bit.
for sure. And it creates that just it's that awareness, that emotion as you're interacting with a brand. It's like, oh, cool, I'm getting points, and for I'm getting my Starbucks purchases are getting me Delta
Yeah.
points. I love both of these brands. I think brand affinity is really where this starts to create a little
Yeah.
bit of magic.
Ooh, that was one of mine. I think a prediction this year is that we're going to, and I sort of said this around the holiday season that I predicted that people would make shopping decisions around brands that they felt like aligned to their social and moral
Mm,
um,
mm-hmm.
ethics and standards in life. I think that will continue to be true. So I think we're going to see loyalties start to be more based on brands that people feel like they align with politically or socially or on a bigger cause sort of platform, because people are making much more conscious decisions about how and where they spend money when they can and where their preferences go, based on a company's larger ethos. So I will be interested to see how loyalty programs shift to potentially message to that
Yeah.
advantage more
Yeah,
frequently.
you shared a report with me recently that was doing some loyalty kind of research and and evaluating some of the top brands from a loyal perspective, and it highlighted that the emotional driver behind why people choose a specific brand and continue to return to that brand has increased significantly. That there's not a lot of kind of like it's not about value or your typical levers that you would look at. It's the emotional driver behind this um, was is really huge. I was curious how they measure that. I wanted to like dig into the reporting because that how do you measure some of and evaluate that? That's probably really sophisticated research, but certainly interesting. And I think I can relate to this. Like the reason why you choose a certain brand, it's sometimes hard to put a specific kind of description around why. And it's just like, no, I love this brand. I love what they stand for. I love something about it that's kind of hard to put words around.
Totally. You also just said something that if I were queen of the entire universe and I got to decide what every business had to report in their annual report, I would make them report what the average lifetime value is of their most valuable customer and their frequent customer, just because I think that's so interesting. I'm always curious to know Burger King versus Nike versus Delta
Yeah.
versus Marriott versus X, Y, and Z brand. Like, what is the average lifetime value? What are we talking about? You can kind of back of napkin like math that out, but it's always a number that's very like top of mind for me when I think about brands and how they can personalize or how much money they can possibly spend on retention and what the value of retention is. Um, so to your point around what is the value of adding social good and how does that change consumer behavior and what might that be worth and how would you value it? Man, I would love to be solving that equation.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Well, I have a question for you. I want to know what
Yeah.
your prediction is on Southwest Airlines this year. So, Southwest obviously just had
Yeah.
a massive holiday debacle, leaving thousands and thousands of passengers stranded and having a terrible experience, which, as a sort of brand, just a beloved cult brand.
I know.
This is the
It's
first
wild.
time in history I've seen them take such a big fall. I'm curious, do you think people will, like, especially their most loyal passengers, do you think they'll just take this as one very inconvenient moment in time? Do you think the Southwest brand will have to do a lot of work to recover? What do you think their approach will be?
That's a good question. And yeah, you caught me off guard. Not so off the cuff. My gut is that, and this I say this as not a fan of Southwest. So like I respect the brand that Southwest has built. I do not prefer the experience that they have built. And I know many people that do. Based on my interactions with those people and my knowledge of the brand that they have built, I think they have built enough brand equity to recover from something like this. I do not think this will be a big kind of crumbling kind of event. It's if you read all the customer satisfaction reports and that get published broadly, Delta is winning in that area. So I would have to think that Southwest is going to have to get creative. Sure, reliability is a core element, so they got to work on that. But what else are they doing? Delta, just to continue to run a commercial for them, they just announced starting February 1st, Wi-Fi is free on all flights for
I
everyone.
know. About time.
And
About damn
and so it's like,
time.
come on, like, yeah, that's like a core experience that we get everywhere else in our life. Yet I've had to run through this crappy go internet payment portal multiple times. Like, this is like, what are we doing? And so
It's
I
so
think
true.
Southwest is going to have to step up and start to like really evaluate their experience. Otherwise, they will probably continue to kind of stair step backwards. They can't just thrive off kind of the existing kind of loyalty that they've built in equity. So I don't know. They're going to have to come up with something.
Yeah, I love that prediction. I totally agree with you. I think Southwest fans are Southwest fans, and people who don't like Southwest already don't like Southwest. I'm in
Right.
sort of the latter camp there where it's not the choice I'm going to make. I do like what they do culturally. Like if somebody on a Delta flight, if there's a flight attendant who wants to just like be a little more fun and quirky, I'm like, okay, cool. I can like tolerate those slightly more fun and quirky. But couldn't agree more. I hope your prediction that other airlines will have to follow suit with free internet. It's like it's so beyond time. Like you get free Wi-Fi at your public library. Why, when
Yeah.
I'm
I
getting
mean,
on a
come on.
flight that I just paid X dollars for, a significant amount of money, You expect me not to have that service. So that's a
Yeah,
good one.
Go. I think that's the name of the company is that provides Wi-Fi on these
Yes.
flights. Might be my
I
most hated
laughed.
brand
Yes.
that I have. I'm not afraid to put that out there. It's been published, so
Yeah,
I would
go
love
go.
to help them out.
You've been put on
Yeah,
notice, like free
put
or
on
out.
notice. Yeah, can't take
Okay,
it.
I have another big one. I have another thematic one. This year, something that we're seeing is a lot of conversation around tech regulation, particularly for TikTok, slightly out of fear of how the owners of TikTok data are using
Right.
that data against American consumers. I won't get too into sort of the like slightly xenophobic Red Scare versus like, is it a real threat of propaganda to America? But there have been a lot of conversations about tech regulation, particularly for social media brands for a long time. We've never seen that come to fruition. There has really been no regulation. But here is my prediction. I think because influencers have so much bread and butter built into these platforms, their livelihoods are tied up in their ability to reach their followers through these platforms. And because we've seen what happens when a platform like OnlyFans decides that certain types of content creators cannot be on their platform anymore, I am going to predict that we're going to see more and more influencers starting email newsletters because they are
Oh
going
wow.
to want to capture the
Oh
first party data of their followers. It's relatively cheap and easy to put out an email newsletter. You can brand it pretty easily. And that will be a way to ensure if they lose a single platform, they're a little bit more able to carry their followers with
yeah.
them in these gaps.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's kind of like almost back to a few years ago where like blogging, you would have people subscribing to your blog. It's kind of almost a version of that. That's interesting. I thought you were going to say something else, which I think is probably also going to be part of this. I've noticed, and it's almost annoying from a user perspective, where like the a person that became popular on TikTok is now basically posting the same exact content to Instagram and to Twitter. And I think they're trying to not be, their livelihood tied to one specific platform because at any point. But that's just like a stopgap approach to the exact scenario that you're talking about. And brands, they're
Yeah.
it's essentially if influencers are following the lead of brands. Brands have been doing this exact thing for a long time and are laser focused on first party data. How can we make sure we're there? So yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, I think influencers will start to do this. It's so interesting to your point. There are a lot of people who I follow on TikTok and I love their TikTok. And then I go to follow them on Instagram and I hate their Instagram content. Or
Oh
they're
really?
so good on Instagram, love the like life cycle content or the lifestyle content that they put out. They really don't have TikTok on lock. The difference between how you expect to consume content on those two platforms and how that changes in the world, I think is becoming wider and wider, where it's becoming
Yeah.
more difficult to just be like, post my photo to Instagram and also post it to Facebook.
Yeah. Yeah.
Particularly if you want to monetize those platforms, you really have to play by the rules of TikTok, which God bless anybody who wants to do that. And you have to play by the rules of Instagram. And they're
Yeah.
starting to differentiate a little bit. So I'll be interested to see what brands partner with what type of influencers and how they partner to sell products in those two different spaces.
This might not be a hot take, but I think huge acquisitions are going to continue. We saw this in the media space, and I'm reading headlines of Subway possibly getting sold. I think brands like Apple and Amazon, I think we're going to see, and Disney, we're going to see some like mind blowing, massive acquisitions throughout the year. And this, I have
Yep.
no information. I don't really know, but there's just, I think that something big is going to happen. It maybe wasn't mind blowing, but kind of back to when Amazon bought Whole Foods. It was like, okay, whoa, Amazon's trying to go after a
Yeah.
whole nother business. I'm sure they're going to do something like that in health, but I think Apple's going to, is going to do something that will surprise people. And so, yeah, it's looking for that, but that's something that is I predict
Ooh.
will happen this year.
Interesting out of Apple. I think that one's fascinating because Apple in my mind has been such a like bottoms up, true to
Yeah.
self built
Yeah.
business.
Innovate,
That
innovate,
will be really
innovate. Yeah.
interesting if that's true. Yeah. Again, we don't know anything about this, but there have been a lot of signals in media about one of Billy and I's favorite brands. It's no secret that we have worked with WW in the past. We do not have an active project with them at the moment. So we've been watching the news just like everybody else as Steph McMahon stepped down this week. Vince McMahon stepped back in this week, and there's a lot of rumors around a potential sale of that business. I'm curious who you think they should sell to, because I know who I think I would love to see buy them.
Yeah. I don't know. I think UFC, WWE merger would be interesting. When
Yeah.
two brands of that kind of area come together, that
Oh, the
crosses my
dream.
mind as
Yeah.
something that would be intriguing.
Totally. Like this world of what is like real sports and how you train for them, but also real sports, but with the character
Yeah,
and narrative flow in a more
endless
controlled space.
entertainment. Yeah,
Endless entertainment, but like so many possibilities
right.
within that space to be cultivating
So
different fans or to be
that's
cultivating different stars.
sounds cool to me.
I would like Disney to buy WWE because Disney obviously is a character centric brand that really leverages the value of individual characters. I think would be such a good match for WWE. And then just the creativity, the cultivation of fans again, the affinity for the Disney brand, what you could do with theme parks and with swag and
Oh
so many
God.
different things. I mean, I know, of course, like Peacock owns the streaming rights for WWE for some time into the future, but it will be really curious to see if the Peacock partnership keeps up versus somebody who's more of a competitor.
Yeah, and speaking of big acquisitions, we've recently gone through this. It's been public knowledge that's out there that WillowTree was acquired by TELUS International, which is part of the TELUS organization, one of the largest telecom companies in Canada. And I think as our CEOs published material on why this was a great partnership, why we did the deal, it starts to really unlock. When we talk about things like voice, our partners at TELUS International and TELUS are working with some of the biggest brands, delivering and partnering on some of these experiences, and they don't quite do exactly what we do, and we don't do what they do. And so I think those are like the signs of an ideal acquisition partnership where you're not really doing the same thing. You're doing something different that complements each other. And I think when we look at delivering on things like great voice experiences or overhauling, a MarTech platform within a massive organization, we're gonna be looking forward to how our new partnership with TELUS International unlocks some of those opportunities.
Yeah, I am for the first time really ever thinking about digital experiences beyond app, web, channel, how a digital experience complements an in-store experience. But now we get to think about things like call centers
Yeah,
and those in-person touch points with a customer service representative or over the phone with a customer service representative, and how you can create a better digital experience that combines really that end to end of digital. So that to me is
yeah,
one of the most exciting components of what TELUS is going to bring to the forefront for us.
yeah. And Billy, to wrap up our 2023, our first annual 2023 prediction show, I was thinking so much about this year, so much content is kind of negative. It kind of is, it feels kind of down. I was joking, like even when I was at CES, like the first slide of this new Ram truck introduction is about inflation. I'm like, oh my God, we're looking at the concept car and we're talking about inflation. This is crazy. But I think in every recession and every down year and every kind of weird time, there are like people that take massive risk. And sometimes it creates massive innovations that change mankind, but also some of the coolest marketing campaigns, some of the coolest programs are created out of an environment where everybody else is kind of tense and scared to do something, and somebody makes a gut call and takes a huge risk. So I don't know who it'll be, but I predict that in December we'll be talking about some sort of campaign or program where the ROI modeling wasn't there. We weren't really sure if it was going to work, but some CMO decided, like, let's do it. I believe this is going to work, and it blew everybody's mind. So I think I predict that there will be at least one or two of those, and a tight market presents just like wonderful opportunity to capture attention by taking a risk. So I hope we get to be part of something like that, but we'll see.
Yeah, totally. We'll have to hold ourselves accountable next December to come back to these predictions and see if we were accurate, see where we missed the mark.
Yeah, good call.
And that will be really fun.
Yeah. So when we post this on LinkedIn, I'm sure we missed about 1,000 possible predictions out there. I would love to hear what you think is something we should be watching out for, thinking about. But
Oh my gosh.
with that,
And talk about our guests. No, talk about how cool our guests are who we are scheduling right now. Like every day we have been hearing back from some guests who are going to join the podcast this year. And I am fangirling. Like we have had so many cool guests already, but the lineup of people who are coming are really extraordinary. I have so many questions for them. I can't wait for the conversations that we're going to have in the coming weeks. So stay tuned, and thanks for listening.
Kudos to our guests that believed in us, because we had zero content that we had created. And so now that we've been able to have so many cool people on, it's much easier to say, hey, some of the industry leaders have come on before you. Would you be willing to talk to us, even though you don't know us and have never heard of us? And so we've got some amazing guests coming up this season on the podcast, and look forward to hopefully sharing some more content. So thanks for listening.